we're all children who have to be shown puppets before we understand. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Yeah. I've stopped. Sorry.
No. Well, it's just stopped and made me think. I mean, the reason I got interested in religious thinking, I went down the pathway that you're describing. I mean, that's why I got interested in religious thinking, because from a psychological perspective, I mean, the first thing that I realized, and I believe this is what you just pointed out, is that there are truths embedded in fiction, for example, or in spectacle, ritual, drama. And well, then you ask, well, what is it? Those are attractive and they're entertaining and they automatically engage our interest. But way more than that, they're also that which culture centers itself around. Yeah. Greek tragedy, for example, which seemed to be integrally associated with the Eleusinian Greek mysteries, yes. Something that we know very little about, unfortunately. But for me, and I was influenced by Carl Jung in this mode of thinking, culture is nested inside a narrative structure by necessity. I even believe that science is nested inside a narrative structure, because the narrative structure is what makes the science practically applicable and useful.
Yes. What else is the standard model, but another way of saying a narrative structure? The standard model is just that. And that is the basis of physics today, isn't it? It's a story.
And the idea that we have that science is a useful endeavor, the fact that we're looking to the material world for redemption, that's all part of a narrative. And I was absolutely staggered by Jung's analysis of the emergence of science out of alchemy. And his notion was that the alchemical tradition was a 2,000-year-old dream, a narrative dream, a counterposition to Christianity with its emphasis on abstracted spirituality, suggesting that what we lacked could be found in the depths of the material world. And that was, and yes. So there was this motivational dream that if we paid enough attention to the transformations of matter, we could find that which would confer upon us eternal life, infinite health, and wealth. And Jung's point was, well, until that dream was in place, there would be no motivation to undertake the process of the painstaking analysis of the material world that didn't produce any immediate gratification. And it took thousands of years for that idea to assemble itself with enough force so that we could start to have scientists. So the narrative was operative thousands of years before the technical process was instituted, and it laid the groundwork for it. And I found that highly credible.
And maybe also took that time for the brain of humans, if you believe Julian Jaynes, and I kind of do in a metaphorical way. I don't know if you know his book.
Yes, I do.
I'm sure you do, yeah. That maybe, our brains weren't even capable of processing in that way around the time of between language and writing, that sort of time. We were finding ways of describing the world to the Egyptian. I believe I'm right in saying this is the derivation. El-Chemet, the magic, became alchemy, which then became chemistry, and it became drilled down into an investigation. But first, you had to believe that there was a chemet, there was a magic inside everything, inside substance, to which we could be tuned.
Yes, right, a redemptive magic.
Yes, if you like. Mm-hmm. And this is not to repudiate science and numbers. And a very good friend of mine, who was a priest, said, physics is a theology that makes machines work. And there's some sort of truth in that. And I love, for example, the story. I tell it in a footnote in Mythos, but it's very, very early on in Greek mythology, when the primal the primal entities, the primal deities are Uranos, the sky, or Uranus, as children we love to call him, and Gaia, the earth, who mate. The sky and the earth mate is a common theme in what they call a mytheme in lots of different myths, as you can imagine. The sky and the earth mate, and they produce whatever is in between, the zone which we inhabit between sky and earth. And that next generation are called the Titans, of course. But and there's the famous story of the birth of Zeus. His father, the Titan, eats all his children, and the mother, Rhea, is determined that the last child, Zeus, shouldn't be eaten. So she goes and gets a rock from close by where she lives on Mount Orthrus, and she covers it in swaddling and hides it under her legs, and then makes the noise of childbirth. And Kronos, the Titan, comes, thinks it's a new baby, swallows it whole, and the actual baby is then born on Crete and becomes Zeus, the leader of the next generation of gods. But the stone she takes is from Magnesium in Greece, which is near Thessaly. And it's a stone that the Greeks had noticed had a very extraordinary property, which is the most interesting property that any object can have on Earth and is very rare, and that it can attract things remotely from a distance, that without there being a physical force connecting them, apparently, a piece of fluff or paper could fly towards this stone from Magnesium. And so stones that have this property are named after that part of the world. They're called magnetites, and from magnetites we get magnets. And the story of magnets and how magnets were then joined by Thomson and Faraday and others to make and Maxwell to make the electromotive force that allows you and me to talk the way we do, and to use that action at a distance, which science is brilliant at turning into extraordinary magical machines. The Greek for at a distance is tele, so it's telecommunication, telephone, television, and teleporting. Anything that goes from one distant, telegrams and and so on, telegraphs, and that is and gravity is the same thing. Something moves and there's nothing between it, and it makes us thrill. And science can do that. And what we've never found a way to do is, or at least what we try to find a bit, is to do the same with our fellow people. But our fellow people are, the world is surprisingly stable. There's magnets around the place, and there's gold and there's stuff, and you dig it up, and you can do terrible damage to it, as we have. But we have moved from small groups to clans to tribes to nations to this strange myth of a nation and so on. And the individuals within it are much less controllable than the objects around us. And yet we can control those objects so superbly that it gives us an idea that we have a special place and a special power. And it's, I suppose, really what we want to do is to reconnect ourselves to the same motive forces that are thrilling, like magnetism and electricity, that exist in also all throughout nature, that we look at. Which of us can't honestly almost sob with joy when spring happens and you see that once again these leaves are being pushed out of dead branches and blossoms there and insects are flying towards them. There's this fantastic process going on. And somehow we've allowed ourselves to feel outside it, as if we are special. We've given ourselves a godlike status, which is very dangerous, I think, and very foolish. And the more I look back, the more confidence I have in looking